Okay, so I'm going to be showing you the substitution method in simultaneous equation. So by the idea of substitution, you need a formula. You need a formula for 1x or 1y. So meaning I need a formula for 1x or I need a formula for 1y. So it has to be 1x and it has to be 1y. We are not going to accept like 2x, 3y. So we strictly go for 1x and 1y. So again, we are going to start off by labeling the equation. So after I label the equation, I'll be looking at the coefficient. So there is the 2x, there's the 3y, there's the 1x, and then there's the 3y here. So do you realize that you have a 1x? So 1x is here. So I'm going to get a formula for 1x from equation number 2. So I'm going to get the formula for 1x for equation number 2. So if you look at equation number 2, it is like this. So once you shift this over, okay, you plus 3y on both sides. So if you plus 3y on both sides, you will get 1x. So from equation number 2, I'm going to get my subject. So do you realize that I mentioned here, from equation number 2, I get my subject of 1x. So what is the meaning of a subject? That means this whole thing represent 1x. So this whole thing represent 1x, and I'm going to put this subject into the other equation. Do not put into the same equation. Don't put back in number 2 because your subject came from equation number 2. Your subject came from equation number 2, so do not put it back into equation number 2. So you should put it back into the other equation. So what do we mean by we put it back? So that means, right, your subject is 1x. So that means this x here will become the subject that you have just gotten, 3y plus 6. So 1x has a formula of 3y plus 6. Think of it this way. 1x, every x has a formula of 3y plus 6. So I change my x to 3y plus 6, and then you do your normal linear equation to solve for y. So this is the set 1 linear equation to solve for y. And this time around, once you get the answer, you do not need to return to any of the equation. You just need to return to the formula. You just need to return to the formula. Your x has a formula. 1x has a formula of 3y plus 6. So once you got your y, you put it into the formula to get your x. So that will be the idea. So from here, if you can detect 1x, then you will use 1x. Okay, but let's say you never realize that, oh, you are looking at it, then you never realize, then you would like to have a formula for y. Yeah, that's also possible. So how do you get a formula for y? So you can get a formula from y for y from equation 1 or equation 2, but I'm going to put equation 2. I'm going to put equation 2. So that means, right, if I put equation 2, this is what I can do. I can bring the y over. Then I can bring the number over. So remember, if you are bringing it over, so that's what I'm doing here. I try to make y the subject. That means I want a formula for 1y. So remember, I need a formula for 1y, but currently this is a 3y. So what you do is you divide by 3. So you get a 1y, you get a fraction. It's okay to get a fraction. It's just that it's a bit troublesome sometimes, but that's fine. So your subject comes from equation 2. Don't put back in the same equation. Put it in the other one that you didn't use. So your 1y has a formula. So in fact, your 1y has a fraction formula. So I'm going to put back in the previous one. So this y will become a fraction. And you can actually cancel. It's something like this. It's a primary school cancellation. So you will end up as a normal linear equation, getting your x equal to 3. And once you get x equal to 3, put back into your formula for y. And then you can find y according, you can find y accordingly. So it doesn't matter which is your subject. It can be x, it can be y, it can be from equation 1 or it can be from equation 2. It doesn't matter. If you have done it correctly, you will just come back to the same answer. So if your formula or your subject come from equation 2, when you put back, do not put into equation 2. You put into the other equation. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more here. Okay, in this case, it will be the same idea. You label the equation. So you label the equation and look at the coefficient. We got 2x, we got 1y, we got 3x, we got 4y. So actually it's easier to get 1y because 1y is already here. You just got to shift the 2x over. So from the first equation, I just need to shift the 2x over by subtracting 2x on both sides. So I subtract 2x on both sides. And the x will disappear to the other side. So that's how I got my subject. My subject, which is my formula. So I gotten a formula for 1y. And where does it come from? It comes from equation 1. Do not put into equation 1. Put into the other one that you have not used. So change the y to the formula. So y has a formula. Think about y is this. So you change your y, then you do your linear equation to get your x. And once you get your x, put it back into your formula. The formula is to calculate 1y. So you just put it back into your formula, you will get your y. Okay? So if you can get 1x or 1y directly, that will be good. Okay? But if let's say sometimes you miss it out, you didn't see the 1x, you didn't see the 1y. So maybe in this case, right, there is a 2x. You want to have it as a 1x. So another method is I'm going to make x the subject. That means I want a formula for 1x. So I want a formula for 1x. So I'm going to shift this over by subtracting y on both sides. So I subtract y on both sides, and then I divide by 2 on both sides. So this is my formula for 1x. So 1x is actually a fraction. So if 1x comes from equation 1, if 1x comes from equation 1, then don't put it back into equation 1. Okay? So remember, you should always put it back into the other one that has not been used. So change out your x to the fraction. So once you have 1x, the formula for 1x, that means you think about 1x as that item. So instead of 3x, right, I will have 3 of the fraction. Because 1x is equivalent to this fraction, 3x will be 3 of the fraction. Okay, this is the difficult part. Some students, right, when they are doing this, they didn't know what to do with the 3. So this 3 will always go up to the numerator. So can you see? It goes up to the numerator. It will go up. It will not go down to the denominator. So if you're wondering what do you do with the number 3, right? It will go up to the numerator. Then subsequently, after that, you see, I've still got a fraction. So you target the denominator. You target the denominator. So you multiply by 2. That means everything multiplied by 2. So you multiply 2 for everything. So you multiply both sides by 2. And when you multiply a fraction by a fraction like this by 2, you actually cancel off. So this technique will get rid of the fraction. So once you have no fraction, it becomes a linear equation like what you did in Sec 1. It becomes like a linear equation like what you did in Sec 1. Okay, so again, once you get one of the algebra, it's quite easy. You put it back into your formula, because don't forget your formula is for 1x. If you already found the y, you just have to put the y into the formula and you can get your x. So important thing is where the subject comes from, you don't return it there. You return the subject to the other equation, or else you find yourself very confusing. In fact, right, you will have algebra that disappear. Okay, so if your subject comes from equation 1, you put your subject into the next equation that you have not used. So that's the idea of a substitution. Okay, so this one is a situation where, right, no matter if you make x the subject or if you make y the subject, you are going to have fraction. Okay, so I will go through a little bit faster. So again, right, if you are doing by substitution method, you can choose to make x the subject. That means you will get 1x as the formula. Now, this 1x can come from either equation 1 or equation 2. It doesn't matter. Okay, so what I'm showing is I show that my x comes from equation 1. So I'm using equation 1 to get my 1x. So equation 1 is 2x. So I shuffle this over and then I divide by 2 on both sides. So I get my 1x and there is a fraction. So once you get your formula comes from equation 1. Please do not put it back into equation 1. So put it into the next equation that you have not used. So the 1x will be replaced here. So the x will change to the fraction that you are getting for 1x. So again, you hit the scenario. So where does the 5 go to? The 5 go to the numerator. So like how I show you here. And then if there is a denominator here to confuse you, to make life difficult, you multiply by 2 on both sides. So you multiply by 2, and a fraction multiplied by 2. And this fraction, if you multiply by 2, you will have cancelled out. Then you do your normal linear equation. So once you do your normal linear equation, you will solve for your y. So you just need to put it back into your formula. Remember, your formula or your subject is for 1x. So after you've gotten the answer, you just need to put it into the formula and you can get the answer for x. So that's what I did. So you put your answer into the formula, back to the formula. Okay, so you don't put back into any of the original equation, even though it works as well. But I will think we can just put it back into the formula. So another thing will be so for the next one, of course, you can make y the subject. meaning you will get the formula for y. This formula can come from either here or here. It doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter. You choose whichever one you like. I prefer the 3y because if you ask me to choose between 3y and 9y, of course I'll choose the smaller number. So I'm going to get my 1y from here, from equation number 1. So I shift this over. After I shift this over, I divide by 3 on both sides. So I will get a formula for 1y. And if the formula comes from equation 1, do not put back into equation 1. You should have put it back into equation 2. So put it back into equation 2. Okay, so if the subject comes from equation 1, don't put back into equation 1. Then you should put back in equation 2. So that means, right, the y here will change into your formula. So this is the formula for y, which is a fraction. So change your y to the formula because you found a formula for y. So in this case, right, it's a number that I can cancel if you realize. So the 9 still go to the numerator. But then after the 9 go to the numerator, it's a number that I can cancel. So once I got no fraction, it becomes my sec 1 linear equation. And once you get your x, you return them to the formula. You return them to the formula in order to get your y. Okay, so I actually, if you look back, right, substitution is more direct. You just need 1x or 1y, then you can just sub. So elimination sometimes is a bit more, I feel there's a bit more steps lah. So I will suggest, right, you prefer substitution because in the upper set, we are mostly doing substitution. We actually won't do much of elimination in the upper set. Okay, so hopefully from here you have an idea about how substitution works. And hopefully by now you have a preference of elimination or substitution, or you should be very clear about what's the difference between these two methods.